Election in any country is, first and foremost, a domestic affair, yet it so happens that in our age, very few elections are devoid of wider regional and international significance. This is particularly true in regions situated along geopolitical fault lines, where domestic political choices often carry consequences far beyond national borders. Armenia's parliamentary elections fall squarely into that category. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has secured a significant and politically important victory, retaining a solid parliamentary majority, albeit falling short of the two-thirds constitutional majority previously enjoyed by his civil contract party. Whilst recounts and other procedural formalities remain ongoing and the final results are yet to be certified, there appears absolutely no doubt that overall outcome is very clear and Pashinyan has managed to achieve his fundamental and bare minimum objective. These elections have been widely described as a referendum on Armenia's future orientation with relations with Russia, aspirations towards Europe and the future of peace with Azerbaijan, all forming part of the wider debate. I'm Orkhan Amashov, you're watching Context, and joining me now in the studio is Ahmad Alili, Director of the Caucasus Policy Analysis Center, and joining us from Yerevan, the capital of Armenia, is Boris Navasardian, distinguished Armenian analyst and a founding member of the Peace Bridge Initiative between Azerbaijan and Armenian experts. Well, welcome to both of you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Boris, my first question.
Hello.
Boris. My first question goes to you. As I mentioned during my introduction, these elections have been widely described as a referendum on the nation's choice. How decisively you think that choice been made by the Armenian electorate?
I think the choice is quite clear. Armenian public is for a political party that has a clear agenda in his internal and external politics. And this is very important for, I think, my compatriots to have a vision of the future and not still be in an ambiguous situation in what way Armenia will develop both internally and externally. And I think the choice was quite confident. And we should not only rely on the numbers that were received by the ruling civil contract party, but also some minority parties which have similar approach to the future of Armenia and its stance in the regional and global affairs. Together with those numbers of parties that did not pass the threshold and are not now in the parliament, the number of voters who are for peaceful and prosperous future is quite essential and impressive.
Thank you, Boris. Just one follow-up question, if I may. As we understand, there are three different types of majority that ruling party can enjoy technically. One is constitutional majority, which is two-thirds majority. Pashinyan used to enjoy it before this election with 71 seats in the National Assembly. That is no longer the case. Second form of majority is called qualified or absolute. According to the projected results, Pashinyan does have it, but if Mr. Sarukyan's party manages to get to parliament, that will be lost. And the simple majority. First of all, is it the case? Is my understanding of your constitutional system is correct? And how would you distinguish between qualified majority and simple majority for domestic purposes?
Exactly, it is so as you described. The constitutional majority means that if a political force has it, they can initiate a constitutional referendum. And this is quite an important issue, as you understand, in international and Armenian-Azerbaijani issues. The second level is qualified majority, which is 3/5, which allows to make several important appointments specifically for the judiciary system, and also to adopt some important laws like election code and criminal code and other codes, which are considered as constitutional laws. And simple majority allows just to vote for more simple decisions in the parliament. That is why I think for internal affairs, 3/5 are very important. And because otherwise there could be some deadlocks in decision-making in several appointments, as I mentioned, for judiciary system, and maybe for passing modified legislation on very important issues. So that is why the final decision about prosperous Armenia will be essential for the configuration in the parliament.
And do we expect a result be made public next week? Is it happening very soon? The final.
Yeah, it will till the end of this week. I think we will have response on that issue.
Thank you, Boris, for this comprehensive analysis of the parliamentary situation there in Armenia. Ahmad, these elections have been followed very closely here in Azerbaijan for very obvious reasons. Armenia is our neighbor. It's a country with which Azerbaijan is hoping to formulate a very good relationship. The prosperous Caucasus will be built thanks to this peace between these two nations, hopefully in the fullness of time. On the basis of the results, what is your feeling? Do you feel Pashinyan is now emboldened? And what does this result, the way we understand it, mean for Azerbaijani-Armenian peace process?
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. I believe, like in Azerbaijan, we were watching not only the developments taking place, but we also were watching so many other issues like the informal contacts. But mainly we were exposed to the quantitative data, the polling results, etc. Right? So the colleagues, and we were following by the reaction of the colleagues, like the qualified voices from Armenia. What's going to be their reaction to this issue? For example, Boris being one of those most qualified voices from Armenia who can expose us to the qualitative change taking place in Armenia. So that's why I'm going to rely on my Armenian colleagues' judgment on that. But judging from quantitative data, polling results, I mean, pro-Russian parties or the parties whose leaders are the Russian passport holders, having 40% plus, it's quantitatively shows that Russia holds a significant power in Armenia, and it might affect the future of the peace process. It's quite important development. So again, like that, we are talking about the quantitative side of the issue. Qualitatively, our Armenian colleagues are exposed to that information, so their judgment is going to be quite an important source of news for us also. At this time frame, we are seeing that only 16 people will decide the fate of the number of the mandates that's going to make Prime Minister's party like that. You know, they are going to have which majority. They are going to
qualified or simple majority. Simple majority is guaranteed.
Absolutely.
Qualified majority is subject to further recounts. Yeah.
16 people, like that kind of numbers. That shows that there are in the elections there were some processes that Azerbaijan would want to see in a bit different way. We would love to see their decisive victory for Prime Minister Pashinyan, and Azerbaijan for the last couple of years there was quite a positive international image for that, and then I believe that.
Do you take it for granted that everybody who voted for Mr. Karapetyan's party and for the alliance led by Mr. Kocharyan are actually against the peace process, or maybe some of them were against Pashinyan's domestic policy, not necessarily against peace? Do you think that choice was so stark? It was between Pashinyan, which is not just about domestic policy, but also his foreign policy orientation?
Frankly speaking, I like usually in elections you discuss about economy and social well-being, right?
Yeah,
but this election was about security. And then the opposition bloc naming their bloc the Strong Armenia. It shows that there is the main message was that we're going to make it stronger, stronger in terms of the security. That was the reading from Azerbaijan. And I believe that, so these elections in Armenia, like how we read in Azerbaijan, it was less about economy, less about social well-being, and more about security and the geopolitical choice. So that is why population, maybe there were like that to a certain extent there were some other issues involved also. I don't know like to what extent the Pashinyan and the church, let's say, fighting at some point affected sentiments of some voters also. That might also be there, but we don't know if it's reflected in the election results or not. But there are this kind of issues. But again, we would love to see in Azerbaijan a more decisive victory for Prime Minister Pashinyan, and or anyone who is for the peace agenda with Azerbaijan. That's very important for us.
Thank you, Ahmad. Very grateful to you. Boris, what do you make of what Ahmad said about Azerbaijani sort of expectation? Also, very recently, you commented on Facebook about the quality and depth of Azerbaijani commentary regarding Armenia's internal political affairs. I think you said something along the lines that it's only too natural that Azerbaijanis are interested in what's happening in Armenia. And you said that there was improvement in quality. What are your key takeaways, and what do you want to see improved further?
I think that the Armenian expert community was very much divided as our society, since the polarization is covering all layers of our population, and the expert community, analysts, political scientists are also unfortunately part of this process. So I guess that Azerbaijani analysts are not so bound with, let's say, internal relations, which their Armenian colleagues face. And that is why they can be more creative in their assessment of Armenian situation. But at the same time, I think that still also among the analysis that we hear from Azerbaijan, I see somehow simplified assessment of our elections. First of all, we have to understand that when we have pre-election period, then this polarization of the society should have to be reflected in that confrontation. And that is why the positions of different political parties were also very much polarized and confrontational. So now we have post-election period when every political party have to prove that they are constructive, that they are working for the future of the country. And I think this could be a ground where certain cooperation between different, even polarized political groups could be achieved. And that is why I think that the fact that civil contract does not have 2/3 is bad scenario. I think it is somehow even good scenario, because 2/3 would be quite bad for Armenian democracy. While the current, let's say, proportion of the representation of political forces kind of hint them to be more constructive and to have more compromises when important decisions are made. And I hope that this kind of atmosphere will now be in Armenian parliament. Of course, this will need, for this we will need change of the moods and let's say political tactics of the participating party, but I see certain chances for that. And I would suggest that we all in Armenia and Azerbaijan, when we are analyzing the political situation, try not to simplify issue, not to see it as just a geopolitical confrontation, because I mean, when it comes to the interests of the country, I think all smart and educated people can find a common solution. This is what I expect from the new parliament.
Boris, I know that your time is incredibly limited. Therefore, I would like to come up with a further follow-up question immediately now. You talked about the oversimplification of what was happening or what's happening in Armenia. This election has been widely described as amongst many other things, as a geopolitical confrontation between the EU and Russia and so forth. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the Armenian government has been very clear that it wants to retain good relations with Russia. Russia is an important actor. Eurasian Economic Union is incredibly important. What Armenia has been trying to do over the past few years, diversifying away from Russia, making sure it has enough options to be more independent, and naturally peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia and subsequent Turkish-Armenian normalization should help that cause. Do you think that in the analysis of many Western commentators, where the focus has been on this rigid Russia-West confrontation, this nuance has been lost on a number of occasions? I would like to hear your reflection on that point.
When we are talking about external relations of Armenia, we have to understand that it should be divided in three major areas. And one of these areas is civilization choice. And civilization choice, I think, is made by Armenian society, and it cannot be changed. It's kind of irreversible. And I think this is understood also by all major political parties in Armenia, that Armenia has to sustain as European model state. And that is why I see that here the confrontation during pre-election period will not have any serious effect on the following developments. The second area is security. And here also, I think almost everyone in Armenia understands that relying only on one strategic ally as Russia was, this was not smart and wise decision. And that is why now it has to be reconsidered by all political elite. And it is reconsidered irrespective on what was said during the promotion campaign before the voting day. And only in the third area, which is economy, we see that certain time will be needed until Armenia manages to diversify its relations and be prepared to be represented in different markets and not only in Russia. And here I think, yes, there will be quite hard negotiations with Russian counterparts so that they understand that common or mutual economic interests should not go further to the, let's say, geopolitical orientation issues or to security issues. I understand that this kind of rational understanding is very difficult for Kremlin, but the quite high level of independence in external politics that is gained by the current Armenian government allows us to hope that there will be enough convincing also in their dialogue with Moscow, and that we will be able to keep a certain level of useful economic relations with that country without being obliged to follow the path that Russia prefers Armenia to follow. So this will be a very interesting period within the next few months, both how the dialogue could be sustainable between Armenian political forces in the parliament and how also external relations, and first of all relations with Russia, will be formulated.
Yeah, it's quite.
And I expect indeed quite constructive and quite useful dialogue.
It's not the end, of course. It's not perhaps the end of the. It could be end of the beginning. Perhaps it's so the period between now and late 2026 and early 2027 will be absolutely fascinating to observe. Ahmad, we heard valuable views from Boris regarding the intricate moments. There's been no reaction from Azerbaijan. There was not supposed to be a reaction. Azerbaijan does not react to elections taking place in Armenia, unless I missed anything coming from Foreign Office, Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan. But we know that there was Istanbul Declaration signed on the 8th of June. Turkey, Azerbaijan, Georgia being participants there. And naturally, Turkish Foreign Ministry issued a statement saying that they are very happy that elections have been concluded in a calm manner and that they hope that Armenia will take bold measures. What do you make of the reaction coming from Turkey and Azerbaijan in general?
Well, I believe that Turkey and Azerbaijan need certain time to digest these developments, that's for sure, right? So personally, I don't have a feeling that things are like there is some certain conclusion, right? And we don't have official announcement of the results. We don't have the promised reaction by some opposition members. So that is why this feeling that some things might take place in upcoming days, it's out there. So Azerbaijan, definitely Azerbaijan, Turkey, European Union and United States, they were in the same box during this process. So I believe that Azerbaijan, there are so many questions right now raising, and for example, there are some Armenian colleagues also raising this issue that can Azerbaijan drop its demand about the change of the constitution, because that makes Prime Minister Pashinyan's position even more, like that, let's say, slightly weaker.
They said that the ball in Azerbaijan's court, Pashinyan achieved this success, this vital parliamentary victory. Now we shouldn't lose time, and Azerbaijan should relinquish its fundamental constitutional objections.
Yeah, so there is this kind of issue. So it means that Azerbaijan is going to have say I would say, a decisive say in this issue also. So what Azerbaijan is going to have instead, if there is some changes? So what kind of development is going to take place? So that is why I believe it is time when Azerbaijan is going to continue watch very carefully the developments, and then wait for some psychological conclusion to the events. So there is, frankly speaking, this election is supposed to bring answer to many questions, but instead it creates even more ambiguities. I believe that the level of ambiguity that we had prior to the elections was less than now. With the new results, the level of ambiguity even more. So that is why I like that. But there is for sure there is a realization of the fact that Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia were on the same boat, and working together, making sure that there is a certain regional integration projects that we discussed numerous times, like that even with you, with other platforms, we are discussing those issues that Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, we need to act together, especially in times when quite a significant geopolitical changes are taking place in our borders. So how to survive in this environment? We have to cooperate. So what is going to be the new formula? So Azerbaijan, in the last couple of years, Azerbaijan did basically everything that it could, like presenting a common stand with Armenia on peace issue, having basically no threatening rhetoric that Armenia was complaining in the previous years. And so there were like the issues that Azerbaijan was very cooperative in this issue. Azerbaijan wanted people with the voice of peace to have upper hand in this game. And of course, like that right now it's Prime Minister Pashinyan. And again, like that, I'm going to repeat that Azerbaijan would love to see more decisive victory for Prime Minister Pashinyan.
And this victory is not decisive enough in your judgment?
Right now, again, like judging from the quantity.
Sadly, Boris is no longer with us. He left. I would have loved to put this question to him. There was a massive, as we understand it, on the basis of what we have seen, what we have heard, what we have inferred, massive Russian hybrid threat in the light of the elections, and you were part of the documentary prepared by AnewZ. And Pashinyan defeated his detractors despite that. Also, of course, there have been claims that he might have used some administrative resources as well to achieve his purpose and so forth, and that was one of the elements included in the election reports by different independent observers. But do you think this victory has been attained despite all the efforts against Pashinyan, or thanks to the support he received from others, from other actors from the United States, from EU, and some kind of tacit support from Azerbaijan as well?
Absolutely. Like, if we dig into this question, I believe that we can develop so many scenarios.
Sure. So
many possible scenarios. But the result is that, of course, like that we all know that there was a mass, let's say, basically mass migration in a very short period of time, when there are Armenians who are living in Russia but are the Russian Armenian passport holders. They traveled back and we know that the patterns of voting of the people that lives in Armenia and has to face consequences of having war with Azerbaijan on an everyday basis, and the pattern of voting of the person that lives outside of Armenia and is less, let's say...
The same applies to Armenians residing in the United States and France.
Absolutely, so in that sense. So we understand that the election results are not purely reflection of the sentiments of the people exclusively living or having a permanent residence in Armenia. We understand that. We understand that Armenian statehood is coming with a huge portion of the diaspora influence that's out there. But the reality is that, so again, like if we dig in there, we can do so many qualitative analysis on this issue, but quantitatively, at the end, we are seeing that the people who are presenting alternative options to the peace agenda that Prime Minister Pashinyan presents, those people had almost like that 40% plus, in some 43, 45, like depending on the...
What's also very fascinating, Ahmad, we know that 49.8% of those who voted...
Technically less than half.
Less than half voted. And this has massive implication for the referendum that should be held if Azerbaijan carries on insisting on its constitutional demand. We also know that we had in Armenia, they had greater voter turnout, basically. I think 58% of the registered voters participated, but not if you compare the 2021 snap election and this election, the extra proportion of population that actually participated in the election, only a tiny part of them voted for Pashinyan. So the greater turnout doesn't necessarily mean that all of those who voted, who did not vote in 2021, voted for Pashinyan. So it shows that if you have everybody vote, there's no guarantee Pashinyan will be able to achieve his objectives.
Absolutely.
So that's a very fascinating moment, isn't it?
This is a very, I believe, a political scientific fact that high turnout means more victory for the opposition.
Yes, in this particular case, yes.
Yeah, well, it's not only in the, overall, it's a general rule. I believe that that the population, general population, should be fed up with the government, so that they should come and present the high turnout and they do that. But in this sense, in this context, we also can say that high turnout is a result of the actions of the groups of interest who were alluring so many Armenians back to Armenia from Russia, or from, I believe there were even Armenians who came from European Union. This is also a fact. So like the diaspora Armenians, although I don't believe that diaspora Armenians, in that sense, Armenians living in France or Russia, they are, in my understanding, the diaspora Armenians are the they have a very anti-Pashinyan stand in this regard. So that is why I like that this is high turnout. It's a result of what? So this is because there is some anti-Pashinyan trends within Armenian society that we are not aware of, or it's the result of this planned actions by the foreign groups of interest that want to they want to intervene into the elections. So there are so many questions. So that is why when I started speaking, I said that we are exposed to the quantitative data.
Yeah.
So that's why we're following what our Armenian colleagues are going to, and especially trusted Armenian colleagues that we know.
Sadly, we don't have the privilege of being enlightened by Boris.
Yeah,
left. But next time I will ask this question to him as well, because after all, this is an internal Armenian affair. Well, Ahmad, thank you very much indeed. I'm very grateful to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, it seems that the 7th of June moment in Armenia's history, and indeed in the wider history of this region, South Caucasus, is not the end of a process, but merely the beginning of a new chapter. Armenia may be a relatively small country, but the region in which it operates is one of immense strategic importance. In many ways, the fundamental question at the heart of this election was Armenia's geopolitical choice, and the reason why Armenia found itself contemplating that choice in the first place is, of course, inseparable from the profound changes brought about by the 2020 Karabakh War. Had that war not occurred, with its consequences, this election, or any election held this year, would probably have carried far less geopolitical significance. That's a mere conjecture, of course. The importance of it goes beyond, the importance of this election goes beyond Armenia itself into the wider region, with consequences and implications that are still unfolding. You've been watching Context. I'm Orkhan, Amashov, and see you very soon.